Okay, just some thoughts on, the ideology manifesto, AI rules, with that go along with the invention I've come up with and the idea. And it makes me think of times through the years when I would, come across, a news channel or whatever and, watch a second or something and hear him talk about, polls, opinion polls on different things. And it's like, I've never been asked anything about anything ever. It's just, I think it's a scam, whatever. They, I don't know how they do their polls, but, I've never been asked anything. I think the majority of people could say the same thing. I actually quit watching the news about 25 years ago because it just irked me so bad that the way they do it is, one channel has their experts, the other channel has another expert. Well, we all know that you can, ask two different people the same question and get a different response, and I don't care how educated they are or how, well versed or, how much experience they have at it, any particular thing or a topic. It just doesn't matter because their personal opinion, gets in the way. And, so that whole thing, that's where, a lot of, the ideas that I fed into ChatGPT to, when it was, writing the manifesto and the ideology behind it all, is things like that, everything is so manipulated nowadays that, that it's just, beyond crazy. And, the division amongst the people, basically it's mostly online, and on the TV, it's not in reality. So, when you get something that enables you to actually input your real true opinion, not based on, brainwashing or manipulation, which, will be an issue to begin with, but AI, if implemented correctly and, ethically, will be a source of true information. It can help you discern, what's lies and manipulation, because all the news channels and all the sources right now online and everything are like that, short of maybe some of the podcasts that, speak the truth. But, that's kind of, where it all came from for me. 25 years ago or more, I quit watching the news because it just became evident that, it was just playing my emotions and people's emotions. And then eventually, from that 25-year mark or so forward till now, it just became so divided that it's either, you can tell exactly how someone's going to vote by the news they watch. That's stupid. It shouldn't be like that. News should be news, and they should tell you, what happened today. A car wreck, an incident, whatever. It shouldn't have, 45 minutes of follow-up with their, hand-picked experts explaining why, it's good or bad, whatever. The facts are the facts, and people that realize that, don't fall prey to that, manipulation, but it's kind of rare. And, even, people that follow Trump or, the Democrats, whatever it is, it's like they're so extreme. And even though, I kind of subscribe to the idea, the way Trump is, because he's been so consistent through the years, with this message, all the way back to the 80s when, on Oprah Winfrey, you can take that video and compare it to exactly what he's saying today, and it's the same thing. But yet I still have doubts about everything because to me, COVID was a scam. It was another tool like 9/11 to, impose more restrictions and to weed out the people that would follow or, not follow what was going on. It was like the vaxxed versus the unvaxxed, despite all the evidence, and history, if you have any, recollection of, history and vaccines and stuff, it takes them decades. And it doesn't matter about the technology. Yes, that speeds things up, but still the process to roll out a vaccine, it was like this stuff was already set on the shelf, ready to go with the name, and, it enriched the already filthy rich, big pharma, Pfizer and all these huge companies, it was like all a scam. So even my, following Trump and, you know, kind of believing in what he was doing and everything, not to the extreme, you know, that, you know, the media tells you, you know, like MSNBC, you know, paints him as a, you know, sexist, racist, and, you know, all that crazy stuff, you know, and people, you know, swallow that and, you know, are just fanatical. They'll foam at the mouth about it and, you know, get in your face and, you know, want to kill you. And then, you know, espouse, you know, at the same time that they're peace loving and, you know, want freedom and choice for everybody. But, you know, in reality, that's not true. But not to get too far into that, that's just kind of the, you know, the background for me of why, you know, and the ideology and how I, you know, wrote it up and everything, and, you know, had ChatGPT write it up for me, you know, because it expounds on everything and, you know, fills in the gaps and, you know, makes it sensible and logical and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, you know, I'm definitely not someone who's trying to restrict anybody. You know, I want just the opposite. You know, I want it to where your opinion matters, you know, no matter what it is. Hopefully it's not, you know, a brainwashed, you know, opinion from, you know, either side. And, but, you know, it's just that, you know, like I said in the beginning, you know, have you ever been asked a question about a poll, or, you know, been involved in any kind of poll that, you know, was asking your opinion about anything? I mean, really, you know, other than maybe on your Facebook or something asking your opinion about the marketing, you know, there's no real polls out there accessible to everyone that, you know, where everybody can, you know, input their, you know, opinion. So that's the basis of it all. You know, it's all a bunch of BS, you know, and with the system and the invention that I would like to see, you know, be produced and, you know, spread among the people. That's the idea behind it, is to give everyone their voice, you know, and you know, it gets, you know, you can go on forever about this kind of stuff, and you know, I'm not trying to get political, but those are just the things that, you know, in the past, you know, 25 years for me, that have brought me to this point, you know, where, you know, seeing everything that's happened and knowing for sure on the ground that it's not true. But yet, if you flip on your phone or turn on the news, you know, you would think that you'd look outside and there would be, you know, fights everywhere and people shooting at each other like a civil war. And in a way, there is a civil war, but it's all propagated by, you know, the you know, big tech and Facebook and, you know, all the news and media outlets that are, you know, owned really basically, if you boil it down, you know, it's basically owned by, you know, one or two big, huge, you know, entities. And, you know, with this idea, invention and everything, you know, it may take a little time, but, you know, when everyone's voice matters and their opinion can be heard, and it takes the, you know, majority, not the, you know, slim margin, to, you know, have a proposition or, you know, regulation or whatever passed and implemented, you know, 75% or greater, well, you know, you're just gonna have to go back to the drawing board, you know, if it doesn't get that, you know, and figure it out why it didn't pass, you know, instead of just, you know, the way it is now, they just, you know, bribe the right people and get this thing, whatever it is, that's, you know, some bill in Congress or wherever, that's, you know, like 5,000 pages long. Nobody's ever read it. They just know that they're going to get a cut, you know, for, you know, out of this billions of dollars that, you know, this bill is going to, you know, produce when it does it, you know, and, or when they, you know, pass it. So I've seen it time and time again, you know, so why do we keep allowing that? You know, we have to implement something, you know, that stops that, reins it in, and, you know, brings the system out and get rid of these people, you know. I mean, you know, they're calling it, you know, drain the swamp and all that, but, you know, I'm not satisfied that that's really happening. So, you know, that's where all my ideas come from, and that's, you know, the ideology and the manifesto is all based on that, you know. So that gives you some context and, you know, the direction I want it to go.